Things have very much changed for me now that I'm dating in my 30s compared to how I used to date in my 20s. And I thought I'd share those important changes that I made in this episode of the Date with Confidence podcast, because some of the things that I do now have definitely impacted my dating life in a much more positive way. And at the time of recording this, I am seeing someone new, have been seeing them for a couple of months now, and things are going very well. And I believe that is because of some of these changes. So before we get into the episode, as a reminder, on Wednesday, I'm running the brand new free masterclass called The Dating Debrief. Do come along to that because I've got some very important news to share with you. And it's going to really benefit you if you are considering entering the dating world, or if you are actively in your dating era and you want to improve things for yourself and you want your next relationship to be a much healthier one than one you've ever experienced before. So sign up for free via the link in the show notes. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Date with Confidence podcast, a place to come for dating advice, support, and stories that'll either fill you with hope or relief that your dating experience wasn't as bad as it could have been. With practical episodes that'll provide you with easy to implement tips to help you feel confident AF on your next date, alongside lighthearted catch-ups where your host Rebecca, that's me by the way, shares her own experience dating after 4 years of the single life. You are guaranteed to end each episode feeling less alone in your dating struggles, empowered to never settle again, and confident that the best is yet to come. And if it all falls to shit, there's a special first season dedicated to breakups. You are welcome, my friend. Subscribe, review, and share with your single friends. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to look at is in my 20s, the way that things started. And when I first started dating apps didn't exist. I don't even think we had social media. I'm pretty sure Facebook wasn't around when I went on my first date. Maybe it was. Maybe it had only been around a couple of years. I don't think Instagram was around. No, Instagram was not around actually. Instagram wasn't around when I was with my first boyfriend. So it definitely wasn't around when I first started dating. So I didn't do much dating in my late teens until my first boyfriend asked me out on a date when I was 17. He was 20. He asked me out on a date, and that was my first experience of dating. We went on a first date and then continued to see each other and got into a relationship. So I didn't do a lot of dating in my teens. And then when we split up, I didn't date for a while. I was single for quite a long time. I think it was about 18 months that I was fully single for. And then this is going to sound so bad. Then I had hit this point where I had not slept with anyone for 18 months since my ex. And I just hooked up with a guy that I went to school with just because I just wanted to have sex again. I wanted to get over that milestone of having not slept with anyone for so long. So I went on a night out, hooked up with a guy that I went to school with. We don't need to get into all the details, but that was that. And then I went on a night out a few weeks later and started chatting to a guy, got his number, or he got my number, started chatting to him, and I'll share the full story of him later down the line because it's a pretty intense one. But he asked me out on a date and we started dating from there. So then from there I kind of got into a relationship with him, and then I was single for a while. Then I travelled and lived abroad, and I dated a little bit while I lived abroad. But a lot of the times, my first dates would turn into some kind of relationship or situationship type thing until it didn't. And then, I dated a bit in my early 20s. But all of those dates started with chemistry and physical connection. They started with some kind of, I'm just thinking back now, actually, there was a couple of occasions where they actually didn't. But it started with that in person, met them in real life, found them attractive, was connected to them physically, was attracted to them physically. And this, I suppose, always impacted my ability to see whether I actually liked them, to see whether they were a nice person, to fully get to know them in some circumstances. Because when I fancied them, that was it. I was like, I fancy you. That was what was important. So it took a bit longer to build an emotional connection. Whereas in my 30s, things, for the most part, apart from the guy that I'm dating now, things started with dating apps. So it's almost like it reversed. And yes, you can look at images of people, but you don't get that sense of physical attraction like you do when you meet someone in person. So I feel like this time round, it's definitely started with more of a emotional connection, and that's not a instant deep emotional connection. That's more of a, we've been having a conversation back and forth either in the app or we've moved to WhatsApp, and I've started to gauge whether or not I want to get to know this person more. There's some form of connection that's been formed before we've gone on a first date. And then after we've been on the first date, that's when the physical connection has either grown or I've realised I'm not interested in that person. So it's really been the opposite this way round. And in some ways, I actually do think that that is better, because you're not leading with lust, which is my next point that I wanted to make. In my 20s, everything was led with lust. It was, I fancied them, I found them attractive, I wanted to hook up with them. That was what was really important. Whereas now things are different. And I think one of the things that impacted that is my top love language is physical touch. So if anyone showed me physical affection, so whether we were making out in a club, holding hands, if they were hugging me, if they were quite tactile, like I'm quite a tactile person, I took their physical touch to mean more than it did on some occasions. But because of the way that they'd made me feel from the way that they had been physical with me, I got hooked really quickly. It made me feel wanted. It made me feel desired. It gave me a lot of confidence. It validated me in terms of, it made me feel like I was enough. And it's been a pattern that I've been trying to break in my 30s. I have been trying very hard to not allow the slightest bit of physical attention to instantly make me think, oh yeah, this is the person that I want to be with, or I want to continue dating them. Although if you do listen back to the Am I Delusional episode, there's probably an example within that scenario where I was kind of failing at not breaking the pattern. Because after we'd finally kissed, after there had been a lot of flirting and a physical touch, like holding hands, hugging, sitting very close to each other, we'd got very comfortable physically. And because that had happened, I started to feel more invested in him than I perhaps should have done. I mean, it all works out how it's supposed to work out, but I did fall back into that pattern again where I was leading with that lust. And because he was the first person that I'd found myself attracted to after 4 years of being single, there was a part of me that had the blinkers on a little bit, that was ignoring the anxiety in my body, that could see the red flags but was trying not to see them and perhaps justifying them a little bit. But having said that, for the most part, the physical chemistry does come second. I am able to connect more with someone on an intellectual and emotional level now than I was in my 20s. But then maybe that could just be that conversation turns me on more in my 30s than it did in my 20s. Like, 20s was all about physical connection. You're young, you're free. I wasn't necessarily looking for relationships when I was younger. Having said that, even though I've been dating this time, I haven't necessarily been looking for the serious, long-term, let me settle down relationship either. I was just dating with an open mind. So things have changed a bit more there. Even with the guy that I'm seeing now, I mean, I knew that there was a physical attraction there because there was a physical attraction there when we met 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, 12 years ago, however long it was that we met. I think it was about 12 years ago, actually, when we first met. There was definitely the physical chemistry there. And I'd thought about him a few times over the past decade. there was always that chemistry. So I knew that that was there, but we didn't meet up for like 3 weeks. We talked for 3 weeks. And when we first started talking, he thought that I was in a relationship. So our conversation was very friendly and was very platonic and was more of a, oh my God, it's so good to catch up with you. What's been going on in your life for the last 10 years? And then when he realised that I wasn't in a relationship, things did get a bit more flirty, and the way that we spoke kind of changed, yet it was still very much focused on more of the emotional connection than the physical connection. I mean, we did sex before we met, but the emotional connection was definitely there first thing. So then another thing that changed are the things that I found attractive. So in my 20s, it was very much about what you'd consider the shallow things. So I wanted someone with a good job, a nice car, tall, dark and handsome, rich, maybe a bit flashy, maybe like a city worker, someone who had something about them, maybe a little bit of status, like something a little bit shallow, essentially. What I would now consider more shallow. And it's not necessarily that it's shallow, it's just not, they're just not my priorities anymore. I also loved a challenge, and I really enjoyed game playing because it made things feel exciting. If someone made it clear they weren't interested in me, I saw that as a challenge. Or if someone flirted with me but then wouldn't necessarily give me what I wanted, I took that to be a challenge, and that made things very exciting. It's not a good basis for a relationship, I don't think, at all, but I enjoyed those moments, and this is something that me and the guy that I've been seeing have been talking about recently as well, like that whole challenge and chasing someone. And yeah, it was fun. Things were fun. Whereas in my 30s, I still obviously find the tall, dark, handsome thing attractive, but emotionally available guys are so much hotter than your stereotypical poster boy, in my opinion. Like, self-awareness is hot. And you know what else I find really, I don't know whether the word is attractive, but a quality that I never considered before is someone's ability to apologize and to openly admit when it's not even about being in the wrong, but there have been a couple of occasions since I've been dating this new guy where he's perhaps done something that I haven't liked or that has made me feel a certain way. And I've had the confidence to bring it up for a start. Like, I've had the confidence to speak my mind and say, actually, this is a problem. Or actually, I don't like that. This made me feel X when that happened. Not in an aggressive way, but I've openly spoke up about things that I haven't liked or things that have upset me or worried me or left me feeling anxious. And I'm making it sound like there's been loads of things that haven't. There's been like 2 occasions. 2 occasions where things have just, like, something's happened that I just haven't liked. And because it's still the early stages, these are things that we need to communicate about. These are things that we need to talk about. Likewise, I expect him to come to me with the same things. Because if we want to build anything that's going to be steady and stable, where we can openly communicate with each other, we have to be able to talk about these things. Like, yeah, I might have met him 10 years ago, but we didn't know each other. We're still getting to know each other. So he's not going to know if one thing that he does is something that's really triggering for me, or is something that upsets me, or is something that I'm actually not going to stand for. And this is, going off on a slight tangent, this is one of the things that I'm going to talk about in the dating debrief next week, because I could never speak up in previous relationships. Or when I did speak up in previous relationships, it was met with being gaslit or told that I'm being ridiculous, or them storming out and not talking to me for a while, or them going and flirting with someone in front of my face because they didn't like what I'd had to say. Like, it was very toxic. So it stopped me from speaking up. Whereas now, I am more open and honest with the way that I'm feeling, and if something has made me feel bad. And circling back to the whole point in what I'm saying right now, one of the things that I didn't realise would be such a key quality to have is someone's ability to apologise and to hold their hands up and go, oh, actually, I'm sorry. There've been occasions where he has said, I'm sorry, without me needing to say, this upset me. There was one scenario where he came in and he was like, I realised I did something that probably upset you and I'm really sorry. And I hadn't voiced this thing because I was like not in the frame of mind, I was not in the right mood to be able to voice my concern before I'd processed it. But even before I'd processed it in my mind and decided that it was something that I wanted to say to him, like he just knew. And he came in and he was like, I'm really sorry. He was like, I'm trying, I'm learning, I'm sorry. And I was like, fuck, this is actually such an amazing quality for someone to have, because my parents never said sorry. My parents couldn't say sorry. Whenever they had conflict, my grandparents can't say sorry. Whenever there was any conflict or arguments, the way that they dealt with it was really unhealthy. And that's all I've ever known. And even if I've had conflict with my parents, they don't say sorry to me. Like, we've never had a scenario where they've upset me, I've voiced my concerns, and then they've apologised. And that's actually really hurtful to me. I find it really hard. I mean, I don't like conflict for a start, but if something's upset me, I want to be with someone where I can go to them and say, actually, this hurt my feelings. And for them to go, I'm sorry, so that we can address it and put it to bed and move on, and so that it doesn't happen again. And I think it takes a lot of strength, especially from men, to admit when they've done something wrong or to acknowledge when they've hurt you. Because a lot of the time, if somebody says to you, you've upset me, because you don't want to upset anyone, the quickest, like the default response is to jump on the defensive rather than look at it and go, oh, I can see how that's upset you, I'm sorry. Because it's hard for your ego to say sorry, isn't it? It's hard for your ego to admit that you've done something to hurt someone else. So that's also in my list of things that I find really attractive now. We've gone really around the houses in that, but you know who I am by now. We're 41 episodes in, like, you know this is me. Also in my attractive list now, like, rich isn't necessary, like flashy with the cash, always like spending a load of money when we go out. Like, that is not the thing that's important. However, someone who is financially stable, so someone who's got a steady job, someone who is comfortable in terms of their money, someone who can manage their money out like pretty well, someone who is perhaps a homeowner. Although homeowner isn't like the biggest thing, but it is nice. I'm actually dating a man now. I'm dating a man who has his own house, and that is actually really fucking nice, because we don't have to worry about, I mean, I know it is different for 30s, but we don't have to worry about like staying with the parents, or I don't know, having to book hotel rooms if we want some time together. And them being, it's not about how much they earn, it's about them being steady and stable, because that makes me feel safe and secure physically and emotionally. I want someone who can protect me and look after me and support me in all areas. So financially, emotionally, energetically, mentally, physically. I want somebody who is going to look after me and take care of me. Yes, I can take care of myself. I can fulfill all my own needs, but I also want that from a partner as well. Probably one of the biggest shifts when it came to dating and the changes that I made when it came to dating is in my 20s, alcohol was a massive part of me dating. I would drink to feel less anxious and to make myself feel more confident. But there were occasions where I went on dates where I just got absolutely smashed. There was one date I went on that I got so drunk I had to be put in a taxi. I don't remember the end of the date. I don't remember getting home. I spent the night on the bathroom floor with my head down the toilet. I was in such a mess because I got so drunk on this date. And I mean, in hindsight, I shouldn't really have gone on the date. This guy had been asking me out for a few weeks. It was probably a couple of months, actually. He asked me out a few times over the course of a few months. He was in the friendship circle that we were in. And I had gone through a really traumatic breakup with my second boyfriend. And I wasn't ready to date. I was not emotionally stable enough to be able to go on this date. But I gave in and was like, do you know what? This guy's a really nice guy. Like, I am going to go on a date with him. We'll go, we'll have fun. But because I was nervous, because I was still processing the breakup, because I was still struggling with the fallout of that, I just got absolutely wankered. And it was just not a good look at all. It wasn't attractive. It was appalling. And I couldn't drink red wine for that for years. Like literally years. I couldn't drink red wine for that afterwards because it made me so sick, and I've got a phobia of sick. So it was just an awful experience. Whereas now in my 30s, I would say the majority of my dates have been sober, which has meant that I've actually got to know the person and connect with them without that mask of alcohol. So without those moments of drinking where you kind of have the blinkers on a bit more and your senses are a little bit numb, and it's just different. I mean, even when I went out with this guy that I'm seeing, like, we did axe throwing. So we were sober for the majority of the day, and then we went for dinner, and then I had a couple of glasses of wine and got a little bit tipsy, but not like drunk. And I like that. I feel like you do get to connect from a better place. So that has been, I think that's been a really important change. Now, I also wanted to cover the things that I tell myself, the way that I act and the way that I feel, and how these have all changed from my 20s versus my 30s. And this is based on the 1990 mindset concept, which you can learn about in episode, I think it's 19. This simple concept helps me date with confidence. So it's based on the third core principle of the 1990 mindset concept, and this idea that there are 3 layers of confidence you need to create to become 90% confident 90% of the time. And these are things that I have purposefully changed, that I have consciously changed to help myself date with confidence so that I can manifest a wonderful man into my life. So the things that I tell myself have changed. So in my 20s, before I went on a date, and then perhaps during that dating process, I would say to myself, he's so much hotter than me. I need to play hard to get so that he doesn't get bored. What if he doesn't think I'm good enough for him? I need to pretend to be the cool girl, even though I'm really not. And I very much told myself these stories that are basically around me not being good enough and me needing to change who I am just so that guy would like me. Whereas now in my 30s, the things that I tell myself are things like, I love and accept myself for who I am. The more authentically myself I am, the closer I'll get to finding the one. I am enough as I am, and the right person will believe it. It's safe for me to talk about my feelings and use my voice in a healthy way. And these are positive affirmations and mantras that I've been drilling into my brain for months, years now. And these are all about me and me being enough, me loving myself, me being good enough for who I am and not needing to change myself just to get somebody to like me. The ways in which I act that have changed. So in my 20s, I very much played games to get their attention. And this is such a toxic behavior, but I would text the wrong person just to get a response from them. So if I hadn't heard from somebody, I might send a message like, oh my God, I can't wait. See you in half an hour, as an example. So that because in my mind, I was like, oh, if he gets that, he's going to be like, well, who's she going out with? And he'll get jealous and then he'll want to be in contact with me, which is so unhealthy, but I'm sure we've all been there. I also allowed anxiety to get the best of me. So I would send multiple messages. I would let the spiraling thoughts really take over. And I would use those spiraling thoughts against the person that I was dating and almost use it as well, this is how you've behaved. This is what you're doing. And use it to really fuel the distrust I had in them. And I would expect all men to behave the same way, i.e., I'm going to be hurt by them. So no matter who they were, even if I'd never met them before, even if they were a genuinely nice guy. Like the guy that I went on a date with from my friend group, like 12, 13 years ago, he was a genuinely nice guy. But because of the way that I'd been treated by other men, or boys at the time, I was so convinced that he would hurt me as well. And I would take that into the future dating experiences. So it's almost like I had this wall up, I had this guard up. I was treating them as if they were somebody that would hurt me, or as if they were someone that would also hurt me, just like the other people had. And when you treat people like that, you kind of have this chip on your shoulder where your behavior isn't open. You're not allowing things. You're tarring them with the same brush. And that's not fair on you, because you're not allowing yourself to have the opportunity of an amazing experience with someone new. And it's not fair on them, because they haven't done anything to show you that that's the case. It's not fair for you to treat someone based on how somebody else has treated you. So now in my 30s, I have got zero desire for game playing, because I'm no longer insecure in myself. Them not texting back doesn't mean that I'm not enough, so I don't need to play games anymore. If they don't reply to me, that's okay. I mean, this is something that I have to coach myself through regularly, but or maybe not so regularly now I'm talking to this guy, but I don't allow their behavior to mean anything about who I am as a person and mean anything about my worthiness. So I don't need to play games. I also have the ability to self-soothe when I'm anxious, which I talked about in the last couple of episodes. So the last episode that's about dating advice, and then the episode before that, how to quit obsessing over why I wasn't messaged. I have the ability to self-soothe and to coach myself through the anxiety, so I am not acting from that space of an anxious spiral. And I also no longer treat the person that I'm dating as if he was one of the men who hurt me in the past. This is very much a practice that I am actively working on at the moment. If there is an occasion where something he does or doesn't do is triggered, where it triggers something from my past relationships, I have to remind myself and say to myself the words, he is not X, he is not X, he is not X. I'm saying X because it's my ex's name. I don't really want to talk about him on here. I have to repeatedly say that to myself, and I have to remind myself of that. And in those moments, I look for evidence of the ways that he is not like my ex. And when I gather all that evidence, my brain can relax and go, okay, he hasn't shown you that he's going to treat you like this now. And then lastly, the way that I feel has changed. So in my 20s, I very much felt like I had to impress people, because how other people felt about me was a true indication of my worthiness. I'm sure we have all been there. I constantly felt like I was about to lose the person. This was continual, and this was very much after the traumatic experience I had with my second boyfriend, which I'm going to talk about in a few episodes' time. I was so terrified that I was going to lose the person and that I was going to be abandoned. It was just a state that I lived in, and it was horrific. I lived in it for like the whole 5 years of my last relationship. And I also felt the desperate need to see them constantly once I was into them. So I didn't want me time. I didn't want to spend time apart from them, because I was scared that if we weren't together 24/7 and we weren't in that codependent state, that they would leave me or abandon me or cheat on me or forget how amazing I was and decide that they didn't want to be with me. Whereas in my 30s, I no longer feel like I need to impress anyone, because I am confident in who I am, and I know that I will be magnetic to the right person. And I mean, that's point proven with current guy. That the way that this happened was so random. It wasn't on the cards. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something that we thought about. It literally came up in the most random way. If you haven't heard, then you can go back and listen to, I think it's the Dating Diaries, for how we ended up going on a first date and then how things have kind of ended up now. It was literally like magnets. Like that's what it was. We're like magnets. It wasn't Like it's just wild the way that it happened. I didn't need to impress anyone. Like, I am just exactly who I am. And this guy really likes me for who I am. And he has seen me without makeup on. He's seen me first thing in the morning. He's seen me bawl my eyes out when, one, I've been triggered by events from my past, and two, I've been crying over my dog that died. Like, he has seen me in some pretty horrendous states, yet that's all okay. I don't need to try and put on an act or try and be this best version of myself because we've only just started dating. Like, I am who I am, he is who he is, and it's working nicely. Now, there is still a little anxiety around things being taken from me, which I did talk about in the last episode, but this is only around 10% of the time. So, based on the 90-90 mindset concept, it is okay for 90% of the time you feel confident and 10% of the time you feel like utter shit. It's okay for 10% of the time for you to have self-doubt, for you to have anxiety, for you to be stuck in that fear of loss, fear of abandonment. It is okay. And whereas when I was in my 20s, that was my state for probably 90% of the time. It was probably the complete opposite. 90% of the time I was anxious, 10% of the time I was confident. Now it's the opposite. 90% of the time I'm very confident, very self-assured, very secure in myself, very secure in, I was going to say my relationship. We haven't used that word yet. Well, I mean, like, we have a little bit, but not to each other, like more in, I don't know, shut up, Rebecca. Now I am a 90% very, very secure, and just 10%, typically around my period, where I am not so secure and have those anxious moments. But that's fine, because I'm now dating someone who reassures me without me needing to ask for reassurance. And in the moments where I have asked for reassurance, or I have said, actually, this is how I'm feeling about X, Y, Z, he reassures me and tells me that that's not the case and he's not my ex. So it's good. I'm going to talk so much more in depth about that in the dating debrief. So if you haven't signed up yet, go and sign up for the dating debrief now. It is completely free. I want to see you there. I want you to come along and interact, because it's the first time that I've run a masterclass like this for a very long time. And I'll be really devastated if no one is on the call. So if you've got no other reason to sign up so I'm not on my own. Please and thank you. And then lastly, I have no desire to see them all day, every day. I enjoy my life as it is, and I am still happy to live part of it separately. And I think that is really healthy when it comes to dating someone. You don't want to start dating someone and then immediately spend all day, every day with them, because you still need time on your own. You still need time to do the things that you love. You still need time to spend time with your friends and your family and have me time. And for me, it's like, I need time to work on my business. I need time to check in with my clients. I need my own personal space as well. And I can also enjoy spending time with him. So I definitely think I enjoy dating more in my 30s, because I'm much less self-conscious. I'm so much more confident. I know what I want. I'm comfortable to fully show up as myself on dates. I have got my standards in place. So I know what I'm looking for. I'm not this floating through life, going on dates with anyone and everyone, just seeing how it goes, free-spirited, and then falling into something that's unhealthy. I no longer feel like I need to behave a certain way to impress someone or have the desperate need to be liked by my date. And whilst in some ways dating is more serious because I am older, it obviously would be nice to meet a life partner at some point, but it also has felt less serious because I no longer need to be with someone. I mean, I never really needed to be with someone when I was younger. I was quite happy being single, and it's just so happened that I fell into the relationships that I was in before. But I am so comfortable being single now. Like, I'm so comfortable being single now. And now that I'm in my 30s, I'm looking for someone who's going to enhance my life, not become my life. Like, my life is good as it is. My life is great as it is. Anyone that is going to be in my life now has to add value to it and has to make it even better. I don't need someone to become my life and to make me feel fulfilled in life, to bring me joy in life. I can do all those things for myself. And I like dating with that energy, because it feels, although it is more serious in terms of the relationship that I'm looking for, it's less serious in terms of I just know that my person is there. And I mean, there's a good chance I've already met them, but I know that it's all working out for me. And yeah, I don't know. Anyways, before I start saying things that I don't want to talk about, how have things changed for you in terms of dating? I would love to hear from you, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, or you're dating in your 50s or 60s or 70s. I want to hear from you. Come and tell me what age you are. Tell me how things have changed. Tell me how much you're enjoying dating at the moment or what you hate about dating. You can contribute your stories to the Date with Confidence podcast by heading to datewithconfidencepodcast.com/contribute. Share your best or worst dating stories, your biggest icks, dating tips that you think everyone should know, or ask me about my dating life or a burning question you need an answer for. And don't forget to check the show notes for resources and courses to help you date with confidence. Thank you so much for listening. Come along to the Dating Debrief on Wednesday. I've got a very exciting announcement. I can't believe it's finally going to be out. Oh my God, I can't wait. I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Date with Confidence podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Subscribe, rate and review, and share it with your single friends.